Okay, good evening. This is the September 30th meeting of the Finance Committee. Tonight's agenda includes the discussion and potential votes on recommendations for the warrant for the special town meeting scheduled for October 27th. So before we start the warrant, I'll turn it over to Ed, our Assistant Town Manager, to give us an update on the numbers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to make sure that everyone received a updated warrant. The original warrant that was mailed to you had 17 warrant articles. There were 2 warrant articles that were removed relative to easements. Those are no longer required to be voted by town meeting. Which boils it down to 15 warrant articles. So in terms of the funding articles before you tonight, Article 2, and I'd be happy to answer any specific question relative to Article 2, but the total amount of deducts in conjunction with 3 line items that are being amended up, total reductions of $820,650. In addition to that, Article 3, which amends the 5-year capital plan, is being proposed of 3 adjustments totaling a reduction of $65,000. As you recall, Article 12 at the annual town meeting, we put on hold for funding for OPEB of $500,000 that historically came from funded through tax levy. We are proposing that a warrant article in this warrant appropriates $400,000 from a recent certification of free cash. So that frees up $500,000 of tax levy that we used in an effort to offset expected loss of revenue resulted from COVID-19, which I'll get into after the expense side. Additionally, right now, we have cherry sheet charges that differs from the annual town meeting estimate that we used, although it's not final. We're adding back $35,794, and we have new growth above and beyond what we estimated of $450. We have an additional $214,514.14, although that's not certified yet. That's the last number I received from the assessor's office about a couple of weeks ago. So we have, when you boil all that down, we have total expense adjustments of $1,135,341.86. On the revenue side, when we look at our local receipts, and I'll present this prior to the fall town meeting, we may have a major adjustment in our hotel motel as a result of one of our 5 hotels is closed because of code violations. It is closed pre-COVID, but our hotel is basically closed down in March since COVID, and they're opened up on a limited capacity. We saw a substantial hit on the final quarter of last fiscal year, and we're expecting that to remain somewhat flat during the COVID crisis. So the estimate going into the annual town meeting, we had $700,000. We're now estimating $300,000. It's a reduction of $400,000. Another one of the major line items, trash, based upon the actual receipts we received. We estimated $1,380,000 for FY21. We now revise that estimate based upon the actuals of $1,243,000, a reduction of $137,000. Those are the 2 major ones, in addition to a reduction of meal tax of $50,000. Our total estimated receipts reduction is $616,600. We also the state is level funding Chapter 70 in unrestricted governmental aid based on last year's funding. So when the governor first came out with his numbers for the cherry sheet, it was $14,816,724. If we look at level funding, that's $14,307,334. That's a reduction of $509,390. So we have an estimated total revenue loss right now of roughly $1,125,990 against total reduction of expenditures of $1,135,000. It's about a $9,000 difference. On the expense side, the major categories that resulted in the $1.135 million reduction is employee benefits. We reduced group health insurance by $200,000. We're offering 2 premium holidays, which saves the town. And a premium holiday is basically the trust is going to pay for the health insurance instead of the town appropriation. So it's a savings to the town. It's also savings to those enrolled in the plan. The town savings for the 2 premium holidays is about $200,000. We reduced roadway reconstruction by $100,000. We reduced, and you can see all the various departments that we reduced. We've been working closely with the school department. We're paring down their budget by $461,898. And as a side note to that, the school department did receive DESE CARES money under the federal stimulus bill of about $590,000. They also received a federal CARES Act grant of about $150,000. So they're using that as a way to fill that gap for at least this fiscal year. Our unemployment cost is going in the other direction. We have our actuals are currently running at about $22,000 per month. Pre-COVID, the actuals were running on a monthly basis at about $2,000. That's about a $20,000 increase. Although we did receive a credit for the period during COVID. So right now we're estimating that our unemployment costs are going to cost us about $200,000 for fiscal 2021 based upon the actuals that we're paying right now. That's hard to predict whether that is going to remain constant, whether it's going to go down, or may even increase if we have another spike in COVID. So that line item is going to be a moving target right till the end of the fiscal year. So that captures some of the larger line items. As you follow down Article 2, you can see the change is proposed, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, members, do you have any questions? Okay, hearing no questions, let's go right to the warrant then. The first article is reports of the committees. The next article is Article 2. And these are amendments. The City of Town Meeting will vote to amend Article 3 of the June 2nd, 2020 annual town meeting as follows. So I'll read the amounts. We're going to decrease library associates from $244,711 to $170,247. Decrease line item for assistant director circulation and patrons from $5,000 to $0. Decrease Norfolk assessment from $63,000 to $45,512. Decrease group insurance from $8,000 to $7,800. Oh, excuse me, from $8 million to $7,800,000. I beg your pardon. Decrease streetlights from $95,000 to $75,000. Decrease chief assessor from $76,073 to $66,973. Decrease clerical from $42,658 to $24,658. Decrease assistant assessor from $56,292 to $51,592. Decrease clerical from $146,544 to $131,544. Decrease assistant director from $50,106 to $25,106. Decrease van drivers from $38,500 to $33,500. Decrease minibus gas from $9,000 to $4,000. Decrease road reconstruction from $535,000 to $435,000. Decrease school department appropriation from $27,676,055 to $27,214,157. Decrease patrolmen from $2,122,458 to $2,107,458. Decrease travel line from $3,000 to $0. Decrease equipment from $30,000 to $18,000. Increase unemployment compensation from $50,000 to $200,000. Increase telephone from $47,000 to $57,000. And increase clerical part-time from $11,761 to $21,761. And further, to approve an amended fiscal year 2021 budget for the town of Auburn of $66,937,750 or act on anything relative thereto. Do I hear a motion, Ed, to recommend this article?
Motion to recommend article as written.
Thank you, Ed. And do I hear a second, Kevin?
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so now we'll go through the names. Michael, yes or no?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, the motion, the recommendation passes. Any noes? No. Okay, continuing in the warrant, I want to make a note that we have 4 things that we can do on these warrant articles. We can recommend approval, we cannot recommend approval, we can defer to the petitioner, and last, we could take no position and make a recommendation at the town meeting. We would meet before the town meeting and make a recommendation if needed. All right, so continuing, Article 3, to see if the town meeting will vote to amend CIP Article 4 of the June 2nd, 2020 annual town meeting as follows. Decrease security cameras by $45,000 for information technology. Decrease police cruisers by $15,000, police department. Decrease departmental equipment by $15,000, fire department. Increase fire prevention vehicle number 2 by $10,000 in the fire department, or act on anything relative thereto. Do I hear a motion to recommend, Ed?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you. Do I hear a second, Kevin?
Second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this article? All right, hearing none, I'll go through the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And Ann, yes. So the article is recommended. Okay, Article 4, to see if town meeting will vote to repurpose the balance of CIP funds over district-wide truck procurement as established by Articles 17 and 18 of the June 2020 Annual Town Meeting in the amount of $9,904 for use in conjunction with Auburn High School building rehab for purpose of upgrading the exterior doors at the Auburn High School, or act on anything relative thereto. Submitted by the Auburn School Committee. Ed, do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you. And Kevin, do I hear a second?
A second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I was just hoping that just clarify what the need was on the doors for what the issue was and the need for the repair.
Okay, thank you.
Cecilia, are you on?
Oh, yes, Cecilia, hello.
Everyone. The project for the doors at the high school came in to be a little bit higher than what we had. We had money set aside with previous CIP, and the cost came in higher, so we were hoping to utilize those monies that were left over from the purchase of the truck to help with those expenses.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. And Cecilia, you're the business manager for the school district, correct? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion to recommend. Let me go through the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And Ann, yes. Thank you. All right, Article 5 is, Article 5 is to see if the town meeting will vote to grant an easement authorizing National Grid to install 2 utility poles and a transformer described in the grant of easement document as the overhead system and the underground system on the Bryn Mawr School property located at 35 Swanson Road, Auburn, as part of an upgrade to the school's electrical service or act on anything relative thereto. Submitted by the Auburn School Committee. Ed, do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you. Trevor, Kevin, do I hear a second?
I was going to move to defer on that one. I just don't know if that has a finance committee issue, but whichever way you want to go with that.
You're right. We can okay. All right, well, we don't have a second on the motion. Let me try again. Do I hear a motion to, on this article, to defer to the petitioner?
I'll make a motion to defer that article to the petitioner.
Thanks, Kevin. Do I hear a second, Ed?
Second.
Thank you. So all in favor, Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And then myself, yes. Thank you. All right, Article 6. To see if the town meeting will vote to repurpose CIP funds by amending Article 4 of the June 2nd, 2020 Annual Town Meeting, Packagug Building Rehab, removal of underground oil tank, as follows. Authorize the balance of funds in this account in the sum of $35,485 to be used for purposes of continuing the HVAC improvements for proper air exchange in the building or act on anything relative thereto. Do I hear a motion to recommend, Ed?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second, please.
Thanks, Kevin. And do we have any questions on this?
Has the removal of the tank been completed?
Yes, it has. And when we had originally put it out, we were wondering, we didn't know if we'd have any environmental concerns or issues, but we were very happy to report that there were none, so we didn't need the extra money that we had set aside. We didn't want to leave ourselves short in case, because you never know when you get down there, if it will be an issue or not, but we were lucky enough not to have an issue, so we just like to repurpose those funds.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'll call the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, Article 7, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $13,080 from ambulance receipts for new equipment, stair chairs for the ambulance, or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the fire chief. Ed, do I hear a motion to recommend this article?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, does anyone have any questions? All right, hearing none, I'll list the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. So Article 8, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate a sum of money from free cash for repairs to Engine 3 or act on anything relative thereto. So Mr. Kazanovich, do we have a number yet for this?
No, we're still waiting for a number. We were hoping,
Oh, Mr. Coleman's here, excuse me. Chief Coleman's here.
so I don't know if you have a further update, Steve, or we're still waiting for the vendor to provide an estimate.
So I did speak with the vendor a few hours ago, and I do have some information to inform the committee of, although I want to do so with caution. But just to bring the committee up to speed, sometime around May or June, I informed the town manager and the CFO that we had a problem with our Engine 3, which is a 2009 vehicle. And for those that were around 7 or 8 years ago, maybe, we had a similar issue with our old tower truck that we got rid of, where we are experiencing some frame rot and some frame rusting within the frame rails, which causes a problem called jacking, which essentially means that the rust is building up in the frame and it's separating the frame rails. So I had put the town administration on notice that we were going to have to do something at some point, and I was really hoping to kick this can down the road until next year, where I could possibly build it into the CIP, or at least come into the annual town meeting with this request. Let's fast forward to August. We had our state safety inspection for all of our vehicles, and Engine 3 failed the inspection in August due to this issue, so the vehicle has been out of service since August. So our reserve engine, Engine 1, which is a 2004, has been pushed into primary service. I'm going to circle back on that at the end. So the manufacturer flew a gentleman out from the Pierce factory a couple of weeks ago. He came and he evaluated the truck, and I spoke to the vendor this afternoon trying to get a ballpark number. And what they tell me is, and you know, I hate to even say these things because you never know what's going to come around, you know, to bite you, but they're giving me a ballpark number of $110,000 to $130,000 to put new frame rails in the vehicle. That's not just the frame rails, though. What they are quoting, and in consultation with our DPW fleet mechanic, basically what they have to do is they have to remove the frame rails from the truck, and in order to do that, they have to take off certain things like the fuel tank, and there's other pieces of equipment that it makes no sense that if you're going to do that, you're going to put 11-year-old parts back on the truck. So it will come with a new fuel tank, they'll put new springs in it, they'll do some other things. So it's not, worst case scenario, let's say it is the $130,000, it's not just $130,000 for two frame rails, there are other components in that. Unfortunately, we're looking at about a 1-year lead time for this to happen. COVID slowed down the plant slightly, so they are about 3 months, 4 months behind, just as a matter of normal business with COVID, but it is about a 6-month to 7-month job, even if they are in full production. So we are estimating in conversations, the salesman told me today that they do not see their costs all inclusive going above the 130. So we felt that that range of 110 to 130 would be close. I am get a more definitive number by the time we land to town meeting, because there are some other things that they are just working out as far as transportation costs, as far as whether or not the vehicle, they have to still determine whether or not the vehicle is safe to drive to Florida or whether or not it needs to be flatbedded. So there are some other costs that are going to be associated there. So I'm hoping to have a more definitive number by town meeting, but I felt that it was important to at least give you a ballpark of that 110 to 130. But I just want to caution that at this point, that is an estimate. Circling back around to engine 1, not that I have a problem today. I'm trying to find some wood to knock on. But I do have concerns with our engine 1, which is a 2004 pump. That vehicle on occasion has mechanical issues. It's probably the vehicle that we're fixing the most at this point. And we have to get another 5, let me think about this. We have to get another probably 8 to 10 years out of that vehicle. And we're hoping that that's going to happen being in a reserve status where that vehicle can be pressed into service for shorter periods of time for either breakdowns of the main fleet or preventative maintenance. As I've told town administration, and I just kind of want to mention it to the committee, is that I do have reservations and I have concerns about whether or not that vehicle is going to be able to run 24/7 for a year without some sort of a breakdown. I'm hoping not a significant breakdown, but it's getting very, very difficult to find parts for that particular vehicle. I will be presenting at some point some alternative plans to town administration in the event that that vehicle does go out of service within the next year. That will ultimately leave us with one frontline pump. So I'm going to come up with some sort of a plan of an alternative, whether that may be a used vehicle, in the $30,000 to $50,000 range, as a short-term measure. The problem that we have here is, we purchase a new fire engine every 10 years, and we have a good rotation. The rotation is good. The problem is that, when you throw a monkey wrench in like this, where one of your trucks that you need to get another 10 years out of goes out of commission for a year, it throws a monkey wrench in that plan. So we're trying to get creative. We're trying to be fiscally responsible with it, but I would be remiss if I did not say that I have some reservations about whether or not our reserve truck being able to make the year without some sort of a breakdown. And I just hope whatever that breakdown is, that we're able to get parts for it and we're not looking at a plan B. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's nothing we need to deal with tonight, but the immediate issue, obviously, as the article calls for, is the replacing of the frame rails on that engine 3, which again, that's the primary engine that runs out of the West Street station, and that is not slated to be replaced until the year 2030. So we need to get another 10 years. So it's not like we're going to spend this kind of money and the vehicle's going out of service in 3 years or even 4 years. Based on what the current CIP is, we need to get 10 years out of this vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Chief. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one question for the Chief. Chief, it's Eddie. Are you comfortable right now, given your discussion with the vendor, that if we were to recommend $130,000, is that all in? Does that include those transportation costs that you need to consider?
So again, I'm giving you information that was provided to me on the phone. What I was told today on the telephone was that the cost won't be over $130,000. They are taking into consideration those transportation costs, and they're also marking things up a little bit. I put some pressure on them today, knowing that we had this meeting tonight, so he knew I needed a number, and they did admit that they felt that on the 130 side that was high, and they were confident that it was not going to come in over the 130, but they also did not want to underestimate the job, putting me in a position where I had to come back and ask for additional funds.
Here's what I'd like to do. I would like to recommend 130 for purposes of tonight, knowing that we could amend it on the floor if a number comes in lower. At least town meeting members will know the value or the estimated value of the repairs to the engine.
I'm comfortable with that, Ed.
Yeah, just a question.
Kevin, go ahead. Yep.
Chief, what's the plan? So the 2004 engine 1, if engine 3 comes back to full rotation, you think at some point the engine 1 is going to get retired and you'll be coming back to the town sooner than you would have planned because of parts and it having been pressed into service for this next coming year, you'll be coming back sooner? Is that sort of what I'm reading between the lines a little bit on that one?
Well, that's a great question, Ms. Kennedy. So in conversations with our DPW fleet mechanic, we have serious reservations as to whether or not this spare engine is going to make another 10 years in that status, even from a parts perspective alone. So that's why we're trying to come up with a plan that maybe in the next 3 to 4 years, we try to fit in the CIP somehow, or even if it's just an outright purchase, we try to find an adequate, safe, maybe $30,000 to $50,000 reserve piece that can be purchased so we can retire engine 1 and then run that reserve piece for another 5 to 6 years in the reserve status, but something that may be more reliable than engine 1. Again, it's not something that I'm requesting even in the next year or two, unless we run into an issue where engine 1 goes out of service. More importantly, while engine 3 is out of service and it's running as the primary, which puts us down to 1 pump. But even when engine 3 comes back, the fleet mechanic has expressed to me that he has serious reservations about engine 1 being able to last the 10 years in the reserve status. So we may have to, again, shoot for something maybe in 3 years to get something on a used basis for a reserve piece that will be more reliable.
And just second question, Chief, can you just give us, for perspective purposes, what a new engine goes for? $130,000 for repairing rails seems like a gigantic number, but what does a new engine go for? And what is this vendor saying about the cause? I mean, their engines are used, they're not like they're sitting outside, they're being garaged, they're cared for well. Why, 12-year-old piece of equipment is developing such a significant issue? What's their take on that?
Yeah, another good question. So if you talk to Bill Coyle will say the same thing that I'm about to say, is that the materials that they're putting on the streets to treat the roads today, and I don't even know the exact name of it, but they've switched from a salt to that liquid, and it's causing significant rot and rusting issues for vehicles. The reality is that the DPW fleet is seeing much of the same things that we're seeing as far as jacking. And again, it depends on the year of the vehicle. Now, this vehicle is 11 years old. So the frame rail technology from 11 years ago is different from today. So I'm going to answer actually 2 questions in one here. So we just took delivery about a year ago of our new engine 4, which is the new primary pump out of headquarters. And the total cost of that vehicle is about $480,000 for that vehicle. The frame is constructed differently in terms of the way that the rails are assembled as opposed to the vehicle, same manufacturer, same vehicle, but the frames are constructed differently a decade later. And we have taken preventative steps by also having this new engine professionally undercoated with almost like a rhino liner type material on the underneath of the truck in order to hopefully prevent this from happening, or at least accelerating it down the road. And this is something that maybe every 5 years or so we'll have to evaluate the condition with DPW in terms of what that lining, the rhino lining, looks like underneath and whether or not it needs to be retreated. But even if every 4 to 5 years we were spending $1,500 or $2,000 to retreat the underneath of the truck, over the course of the life of the vehicle, you're spending $10,000 on professionally undercoating the vehicle over the life of it in 20 years. It's certainly a short change when you're looking at potentially $130,000 frame fix. But the issue, and again, this isn't just a local issue. This is something manufacturers are contending with, which is why they're changing frame rail designs. But again, it also depends on where you live. Certainly the West Coast and places that don't have snow and they don't have to treat the roads, they're not facing some of these issues. But any areas of the country where they're treating roads, especially here in Massachusetts, where we're using that liquid on all of our state and local roads, it is really doing a number, not only on fire vehicles, but really the fleet as a whole. It is a concern that our fleet maintenance division has raised, which is why we're undercoating more of our fleet than we ever have.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions? So we have to motion to amend the article, correct?
No, I don't have to amend it.
Just reread it?
Just instead of appropriate a sum of money, it was appropriate $130,000.
Okay. All right, so Article 8, I'm going to reread it with the dollar amount in there to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $130,000 from free cash for repairs to Engine 3 or act on anything relative thereto. Ed, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Thank you. Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Call the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And Ann? Yes. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you. It was great to, I'd love to say it was great to see all of you, but it was great to at least hear all of you tonight. So hope everybody's doing well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, Article 9, see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $250,000 from free cash to the town stabilization fund or act on anything relative thereto. Mr. Kaznovich, can you tell us the current balance in stabilization?
So, first of all, let me just give you an update on the free cash because I don't know. We just got certified Monday of this week on September 28th, notified by DOR for the books that closed on June 30th, 2020. Our new certified free cash is $15,757,928. Our free cash the previous year, fiscal year, period ending June 30th, 2019, was $13,903,276. So the net gain from 19 to 20 was $1,854,652. Under the financial free cash policy, we're allowed to appropriate 50% of the net gain, which would be $927,326. This warrant, now that we know the fire chief's repair article of $130,000 for engine 3, in addition to our recommendation of $400,000 for OPEB and $250,000 for stabilization, is going to leave us a balance of $147,326. So we're not proposing to expend all of our free cash as outlined in the financial policy. In the event for some reason we have to go back to town meeting between the fall town meeting and June 30th for a supplemental appropriation for whatever reason. Our stabilization fund balance is approximately about $3.3 million. There is some accrued interest that has not been posted yet. I'm estimating about 3.3. I think it's important to put money into stabilization given the critical situation we're facing now, more so for next fiscal year than the current year that we're in, only because we don't know if 22 is going to be more difficult than the year we're facing now. Certainly, there's no expectation that we're going to resume economic activity as we saw pre-COVID. It's going to take some time to crawl out of this hole. We don't know how financially stable the state is going to be. They're looking at a $6 billion revenue shortfall for the current year that we're in. They only have reserves of about $3.5 billion. It's going to be a difficult challenge for the state to balance their books. Although they're talking about potentially a tax increase instead of going into the reserves, but certainly we're not going to know that until the legislature acts on the final budget for FY21. Hopefully, fingers crossed, getting some final numbers by the end of October, but they could continue to vote a 1/12 budget and continue their discussions into November, possibly. We just don't know.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Casanova. Does anyone have any questions for him? No? All right. So I've read the article to appropriate $250,000 from free cash to the town stabilization fund or act on anything relative thereto. Ed, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. So all in, let's see, Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Article 10, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $400,000 from free cash to the town OPEB, other post-employment benefits liability trust fund, or act on anything relative thereto. Mr. Kazanovich, could you tell us the OPEB balance?
So I believe I don't have that number with me. I believe it's in the vicinity of like $4.6 million.
Okay, thank you. All right, any questions on that article? All right, hearing none. Ed, do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you. Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Michael?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Okay, Article 11, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate a sum of money from free cash for the Office 365 migration or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the Director of Information Technology.
Madam Chair, this was an oversight on our part. We should have put a value in here. Mike, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Mike, what was the value of that? Was it 30 or 35,000?
So we're still waiting on a number.
Okay.
That's why we didn't have a value. We have a vendor working on a scope of work for us. However, I do have some new information that's come to me since we've put this in place. So I think I'd like to withdraw this instead.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. That article will be removed. Thank you. All right, so let's go to Article 12. To see
Madam Chair, hold on. Sharon, you were on, right?
Oh.
Sharon, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, now that the warrant has been approved by the board, we can remove this at the next meeting, correct?
Yes, well, we removed former Articles 12 and 13 today. So.
Okay.
And then we just have to renumber again.
Okay, so we will remove this warrant article.
Should I call that 11 then?
It's currently 11, yes.
Okay, so we now have a new Article 11, and this is to see the former Article 12. This is to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $20,000 from overlay surplus for training from the Vision/Tyler and for Vision commercial analysis, as the commercial valuations in personal property will be impacted by COVID-19, or act on anything relative thereto submitted by the town assessor. Does anyone have any questions on this article?
Could we just get an explanation of what exactly it is?
So as you're all well aware, certainly the businesses have suffered some with the closures of COVID-19, reduced income. Remember, the commercial industrial properties are valued on an income approach. So there's going to be some adjustments that are going to be analyzed and examined as a result of COVID-19. It's going to require some extensive work through the assessor's office in conjunction with our RRC appraisers. That's something that we have to start in the spring. That is going to impact FY22. So this is a very extensive project. We are asking for a one-time appropriation from overlay surplus to fund this analysis, and it will need to be completed for June 30th.
Thank you, Mr. Kazanovich. All right, so any other questions? Okay, Ed, do I hear a motion to recommend this article?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you, Ed. Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, call the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself. Yes, thank you. So we have three more articles. Article 13, I'm not sure we need to make any recommendation on this. But Mr. Kazanovich, what is, I see that we're amending a general bylaw. What is it being amended from?
So this is sponsored by the clerk. She may be on as a matter of fact. Debbie, you with us?
I am.
Okay.
Good. Oh, Deb, can you tell us about this article?
That's on the general bylaws.
Yes.
Yep.
Last year, after we ended up postponing the town meeting, and we could have postponed the election or changed hours, but because they were in the bylaws, we couldn't do that. We had to hold the election for the time that they were in the bylaws. So we just figured, in talking with Eddie and Julie, and they were fine, just taking the hours out. I mean, basically, the hours would be whatever the warrant is posted. We will more than likely keep them always the same. But if something like this comes up again and we were able to change the hours or shorten an election because of the vote by mail ballots or, anything that came up with the pandemic, we would be able to do it. But because they are stated in our bylaws, we couldn't do it as far as the election was concerned.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And same with the town meeting. When we had it in June, when we ended up having it at, deciding to have it at 6, we had to do something different with that. So if we don't have them stated in the bylaws, then we would be able to determine the time. So that was the whole reason.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. That makes sense. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, hearing none. Ed, do I hear a motion to defer to the petitioner on this article?
Yes. Motion to defer defer to petitioner.
Yeah, thank you. And Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, call the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Okay, and myself, yes. Defer to the petitioner. Thank you. Okay, 2 more articles. This is the new Article 13. It used to be 14. To see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $20,000 from general fund revenues for unanticipated costs associated with the special town election and changes to the state election laws, or act on anything relative thereto. All right, Ms. Gramo, as town clerk, do you want to tell us about this article?
Yes, the special town election that we had was unanticipated, so we didn't have it in our 2021 budget. And a typical town election costs roughly around $10,000, but because we ended up having it as a dual election with the September primary, it ended up bringing, we had a much higher turnout. The state primary ended up being very busy, and the ballot cost, I ended up having to order extra ballots. So I don't know the exact figures of the special town election, but between the special town election and the special legislation for the remaining elections for 2020, ended up, there were an awful lot of extra costs that were definitely not anticipated and were not in the budget for 2021.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gramo. Any other questions? Okay, Ed, do I hear a motion to recommend this article?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you. Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll go through the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. So the last article, the new Article 14, it was Article 15, addresses a zoning map bylaw change. And we do not, Finance Committee does not usually vote to recommend these or not recommend. So Ed, do I hear a motion to defer to the petitioner for this Article 14?
Motion.
Thank you.
Motion to defer to petitioner?
Thank you. Do I hear a second, Kevin?
Second.
Okay, I'll go through the roster. Michael?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. So that's it for the warrant. In looking at the agenda, we don't have any transfer requests to vote on. And we don't have any minutes to address. So does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Okay, so it looks like, as far as we know, Mr. Kazanovich, will we have to meet before the October 27th special town meeting?
I don't believe so. You took a position on all the warrant articles.
And we don't have to meet right before the town meeting also. So, hearing no other questions, do I hear a motion, Ed, to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Kevin, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye.